I want to make sure that my voice mic amplifier works. Again, I apologize if there's any squeakiness. This thing has a mind of its own. I like to use it though so everybody can hear, and so there's better audio if you're watching online. So I'm trying for everybody involved. So I'll give you guys each a minute to kind of get situated, figure things out, and then we'll get started. We are already into session 5. That's amazing. So I just want to first thank everybody. Thank you for sticking with it. I know the majority of you have to, but thank you for sticking with it because it still is determination to come and do what you're supposed to do, even when it's ordered. Not everybody wants to do it, and some people don't do it, and some people just say, hey, I'll do it later, and then they don't understand that just creates larger consequences. So it's really good that you guys have made the decision to see this through, because the sooner you get it done with, the sooner you meet the requirements for court, the sooner you can meet the requirements if you have a driving need, an MVD need. All of these will be inputted, and it won't lead to anything further like revocation of license or an arrest warrant because you didn't do what you're supposed to do with the court. So it's very good that you stayed with it. You're in session 5, and today we're going to be talking about healthy relationships in recovery. Now, not everybody is going to choose to be in recovery, and just because your court order doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be in recovery. Some of us might have to be in recovery. We don't have a choice. We're randomly UA'd. But for those of you who do choose to be in recovery, this is going to be a really great session, because even if you're in recovery just for yourself, maybe you still want to consider yourself a social drinker or occasional drinker a couple times a year with family. You're still going to be in recovery mode, becoming different than what you were before. So we're going to look at some different components and variables of what a healthy relationship doesn't look like. And the first variable I'm going to talk about is physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. So what I want to say first and foremost, if you are, and I know I've mentioned it before, but if you are ever in a dangerous situation, a situation that would put you or your children in danger or at risk of getting hurt, or there's, threats that you're going to be hurt, I would always recommend and encourage that you remove yourself from that situation. So you might do that by going to a friend's house, by finding supportive family members, if you have the means and you're financially able to, maybe renting a different place or going and staying somewhere temporarily. However you have to do, there's tons of shelters out there. There's domestic violence shelters for both men and women. There's domestic violence shelters out there for families, so children are welcome. So there's lots of resources today, and if you ever need those resources, please reach out to me, okay? Reach out to our clinic, contact somebody. There's so many resources in Maricopa County and even outside of Maricopa County. So if you are online and you're watching from Flagstaff or Tucson or Wickenburg to the west, or even out in Yuma, there's resources. So we can definitely help you find those. So physical, emotional, and sexual abuse is not something that you want to allow to continue in a relationship, obviously. So let's talk a little bit about what each of them would be. Physical abuse is probably the most understood. It is where somebody would physically put their hands upon somebody else and they would harm them physically. It could be pulling of the hair, slapping, punching, kicking, and it doesn't just happen to females. Physical abuse happens to males. Physical abuse can happen in any type of a relationship. Physical abuse can happen obviously to children. Physical abuse can happen to the elderly. Anybody can be physically abused, unfortunately. So we understand that concept usually. Physical abuse is a lot easier to understand than some of the other ones, because physical abuse shows up, right? People get bruises. Sometimes, if there was a weapon involved, they have scars. So it's easy to tell when somebody's been physically abused. However, an emotional abuse might not be that easy to tell, and it might not be something that you understand is happening when it's going on in your relationship, especially with somebody you love. Now, I want to make it clear that emotional abuse can happen in any type of relationship, and it can happen to, again, it can happen to females, it can happen to males, it can happen to children, it can happen to the elderly. Anybody can be emotionally abused. And an emotional abuse situation would look like where somebody's trying to harm you on a different type of level other than physical, okay? And that can even go into, we'll even broaden that to financial abuse. So when somebody's emotionally abusing someone, they might be making fun of them. They might be talking down to them. They may even say things to them that make that person think that they don't know what they're talking about. So there's something called gaslighting. And gaslighting in an abusive relationship is very serious, and somebody might not even know that it's happening to them. But let me try and give you an example of gaslighting instead of just trying to define it and explain it. So an example of gaslighting would be if let's say there was a relationship and you had a female and a male, and the female saw something happen that the boyfriend did, or the husband did, the male in the situation did, and pointed it out to him and said, hey, I know that you purposely did not lock that front door today when you left. I watched you look at it, I watched you take your keys out, and then I actually watched you put your keys away. And then that male says to the female, that's not true, that's not what happened, you didn't see that. So he begins to try and make her think differently, that she didn't witness that, or she doesn't feel that way. And that can happen again, vice versa. It doesn't have to just be from a male to a female. Females are great at abusing emotionally as well. So emotional abuse is something other than physical, but it's just as harmful, and it can create lots of problems. It can create low self-esteem. It can cause a person to feel no longer empowered for themselves or in a relationship. So there's lots of just components here that go along with emotional abuse. Now, sexual abuse can also be touchy in a relationship because most people think, well, it's consensual if I'm married to them, right? Or it's consensual, we've been dating for 3 years. But it's not consensual if someone doesn't know that it's happening. Like if they had been drinking and they passed out, or they took some medication and it made them drowsy and they went to sleep. It's not consensual if the person said no and the other individual proceeded to do that to them anyways. So it does not matter if you are in a marriage or if you are in a relationship. If somebody hasn't consented to sex and the other person completes a sexual act upon them without consent, then yes, that is sexual abuse. That could even be considered rape. So we have to understand that sexual abuse does occur in relationships. It does occur in marriage. Sexual abuse can definitely create problems and dilemmas. So just know that in a healthy relationship, abuse should not be occurring of any kind. You also want to know that there's also physical and emotional neglect that are unhealthy traits in a relationship. So physical and emotional neglect would be when things aren't being met or being cared for. So like physical neglect, we probably could see that very easily when a parent is not taking care of their child, right? So the child needs food, or the child needs basic needs like a bed to sleep on, or water to drink, or clothes to wear to stay warm or to stay out of the elements, whatever's going on. And when those needs aren't being met, physically, that child is not being cared for. So that is not healthy. So if you're in a relationship with a male or a female who's not taking care of their own child physically, then yes, that's physical neglect, and something needs to be done about that. Emotional neglect in a relationship can be it can be disheartening because you don't necessarily know when it's going on, or you become so accustomed to it, so used to it that you no longer even consider it to be neglect. You just consider it to be normal. And it can happen both to males or females. And in a relationship sense, like a marriage, or maybe when a person's dating somebody else, emotional neglect can be when the needs emotionally are not being met. So if somebody comes to their partner and they're like, I'm sad, I just found out a friend from high school died, I'm feeling really, really sad about it, I'm going through some grief, and their partner doesn't want to hear about it and really thinks that it's nonsense and just kind of ignores them, that can be considered some neglect. So again, as you're working through this treatment program and maybe some support groups on your side, and you're developing a new support system and you're creating something new for your life, it's important to understand emotional neglect. It's important to understand physical neglect. It's important to understand abuse in all senses. We also want to make sure that everybody understands that witnessing somebody being abused is also traumatizing. So if you're in a relationship and you have a small child and your small child is continuously watching you get abused or get physically hurt or yelled at or cussed at or things broken, that type of an environment is very dangerous for the child and for yourself. Again, it can happen to males or females, it can happen to children, it can happen to the elderly, it can happen to anybody. Everybody can be a victim, unfortunately. But it's how you're going to respond to that and step up and realize that that's not healthy and that's not what you need to be in. And that's especially not what a child needs to be in. So we definitely need to be careful there. And that can cause a lot of trauma too. And trauma, while we can work through trauma, trauma is something that is very challenging and can come back again, you know. So if you can avoid traumatic situations, there's nothing wrong with avoiding it, okay? So if you can do that's great. Family and friends who are incarcerated. So if we're developing better and healthier relationships, it's important to know what's not healthy, right? And sometimes people we know in our life are incarcerated. It could be for various reasons. It could be for you know, an abuse situation. It could be for a DUI situation. It could be for domestic violence. There's lots of reasons why people get arrested and they get incarcerated. Now, there's different places they can be incarcerated at. If they're under 18, they could be in a place called juvenile detention. If they are in county jail, they're in a county jail system. They're not in a Department of Corrections. Prison would be a Department of Corrections. So there's different types of facilities where incarceration occurs. Now, as you develop yourself and you want to make changes, you are going to have to make a decision on whether or not you're going to visit and how often or how much you're going to support a loved one or a friend or somebody in your family who is incarcerated because of the place that they're in. Now, when you are incarcerated, you obviously can have visitors. You can have weekly visitors. Sometimes they allow for daily visitors. It just really matters where you're incarcerated at. Now, when you make the decision if you're going to see that person or not, you might also have to make a decision about if your children will be visiting inside a jail system too. And again, this decision is something that should not be taken lightly. You want to make sure that you are talking with your support system, that you are journaling about this, that if you pray, you're praying about this decision. You want to make the best decision for you and for the children that are involved in this. So there's ways to support people who are incarcerated without having to go down into a jail situation or into prison. Now, you might make a decision and feel that it's okay. You're able to go down and continue visitations. It's not a huge deal for you. It doesn't seem to trigger you. It's not causing any kinds of cravings or urges. And it seems to fit well with your recovery. You enjoy helping this loved one. So that's definitely something you got to figure out on your own. You're an adult and you figure that out. But if it is something where you're going down and you're feeling more stressed and maybe you leave more anxious, maybe there is time that you have to back off and support from a distance. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a person who is helping themselves and learning what works for them and learning that what doesn't work for them. So that's just a little bit of discussion on what unhealthy relationships would look like. And just some variables that you want to maybe review or understand a little bit more, because as you're making changes for your life, it's important to understand what isn't good for you. Now again, I would never tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I do want to recommend and encourage that if you are in an unhealthy relationship, that you really step back and you make a decision on how you're going to handle that situation. Are you going to approach it with a desire for you both to get into some type of a treatment program, or maybe counseling together, family sessions, or maybe you want to work on yourselves individually first, which is always very much advised. Work on yourself first and then say, hey, after we do some time, let's come together and let's work on our family. That's a great option too. But not doing anything and staying in an unhealthy situation is not going to help you progress. It's going to keep you exactly where you are, and it's going to continue to create issues and problems in every aspect of your life. So unhealthy relationships need to be dealt with. Now, healthy relationships are going to look completely different than what an unhealthy relationship looks like. So your communication style is going to be different. It's going to be more optimistic. It's going to be more positive. The physical and emotional abuse and any kind of financial abuse are going to be absent from that relationship. So healthy relationships do not go around harming each other physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. A healthy relationship is more likely to be looking to build another individual up, to help a person grow, to help them grow together, to help their family grow. You're not looking to break that down in a healthy relationship. So if you don't feel that type of support in the relationships you are in, chances are you're not in a healthy relationship. Now, it doesn't mean it's a doomsday, it doesn't mean it can't change, because it can. Healthy relationships can certainly happen even when they were at their unhealthiest time in their life. So you can definitely take a really bad situation and turn it into something amazing. I've seen it happen. I've been doing this for 16 years now, and I've seen it happen so much. It's going to take work, though. It's going to take work on your part, and the only person that can do the work for each person is themselves. So you have to remind yourself that. You might be gung-ho and excited to do the work, but your partner might not. And you have to understand that. You can still work on yourself, and then once you're done doing that, if your partner's not willing to do the work for themselves and they continue to remain unhealthy, you have to make that decision, and it's a hard decision sometimes. But you have to make that decision on whether or not you're going to stay in that type of relationship or stay in that type of environment, or if you're going to remove yourself from that until that person chooses to make the changes that are needed to build a healthier relationship. So it's very important. And communication is going to be key there. And we learned in the very first session and continuing sessions since that there is a specific type of communication style that just works better than others. And that's the assertive communication style. That's where there's equal respect. That's where people are sharing what they want. They are asking what the other individual wants. They're not screaming, they're not cussing, they're not throwing things, they're not keeping secrets, they're not harboring resentment. We want to make sure that our communication is healthy and that it's assertive. So remind yourself when you're talking in your relationship, if you don't feel that it's a great type of communication style, then there's ways to change it. Get some of your worksheets out. Share with your family members, share with your loved ones what you've learned along on this journey. And teach them how to communicate. Watch more videos. Watch the sessions again. You can become a better communicator, and so can your loved one if they're willing to. Another aspect of healthy relationships are something called healthy boundaries. Now, I want you to think of a boundary visually. A boundary is anything that separates something, right? So it can be a fence around your backyard. That's a boundary. It can be, when you close a door. That's a boundary. So it's something that essentially keeps you safe physically. And in a relationship, healthy boundaries are going to keep you safe not only physically, but emotionally as well. So when you create boundaries for yourself, you are telling somebody else that you are learning how to self-love and how to respect yourself and how to be healthier. And boundaries are a part of that. Everybody needs boundaries. And it's also a part of good communication. If we don't have solid boundaries that we're willing to live and stick by every day, we can definitely risk getting walked over. We can definitely risk harming our relationship, and we can definitely risk building resentment and hurting other people in the future because we're so mad and angry and we haven't kept those boundaries and we've been taken advantage of. So boundaries are important for everybody. Now you have to develop your boundaries in a relationship. And if you're used to being the person that kind of carries it all, or maybe at home you clean everything up, you cook dinner, you do it all, you go to work, and by the end of the day, you're resentful towards your family members, then you have to establish some boundaries. You can't do it all. Nobody can. None of us are capable of doing it all. We might think we can, but at the end comes resentment, fatigue, exhaustion, sickness, disease. You shouldn't want to do it all. Everybody should be able to do their part. It builds a family unit and it builds respect for each other. So you want to delegate. Instead of doing it all, delegate. Arrange chores that everybody has to do. Your husband, your wife, your children, if you're living with in-laws, arrange things that everybody has to do. There might be specific laundry days. Everybody might have their own laundry day. Everybody's in charge of their own laundry. You do your laundry on Monday. Your spouse does their laundry on Tuesday. Or your children do it on Wednesday. However it is you want to do it. Maybe you want to do the laundry for your spouse and yourself. And maybe your spouse has the duties of keeping up the yard work, picking the weeds, mowing the lawn. And your children have the responsibility of doing the dishes after dinner. We have to delegate, we have to make sure. So that's one way to establish some boundaries, is to say, hey, I'm not going to do it all anymore. I really can't. It's affecting me physically, It's affecting me emotionally, and it's affecting my relationships. I am not happy because I feel like I do it all, and I'm resenting you guys. So again, it's communicating well, it's establishing some boundaries, it's putting the rules out there, and then it's sticking by them. So you can't just say them one day and do it for a week, and then after a week, you notice people are slacking, so you start picking up their slack. That's not how it works. You have to sit everybody back down at your table, and you need to talk about it again. And you don't have to talk about it rude. You don't have to point at anybody. This is where your simple I statements come back in, and your assertive communication comes in. So you sit everybody down at the table, and you say, hey, we've been doing so good, but I know the last couple of days have been busy, and we just have to get back on track. So Monday is your day to do dishes. Tuesday is your day to clean up the backyard. Wednesday is your day to do laundry, and you delegate again. So you're not doing it all anymore, but you're in charge of getting things ready. Because you're so used to doing it all, that's going to help you, I don't want to say stay in control, but it's going to help you, maybe that's where you fit in your family. Maybe they look to you to be in control. And that's a sense of control, but yet it's a healthy way of controlling it. So establish healthy boundaries. Now, another type of healthy boundary might be in a relationship. Maybe you're not married yet, and maybe you've put some boundaries up in that relationship. Maybe you want to wait till marriage and to consecrate or to have sex with your partner. Maybe you have a boundary there, right? And you have to make sure that you keep those boundaries. So maybe you don't want to be alone with them. Maybe going to their house when nobody else is there isn't part of what you need to do in that relationship. These are just ideas. Maybe you're putting up healthy boundaries when you're going out with some friends. Maybe you don't want to drink anymore. So if they're going to a bar or to a club, maybe you're like, well, that's not really what I want to do tonight. So when you guys decide if you're just going to want to go to dinner or you want to go catch a movie, let me know and I'll go with you guys. But I'm not really into going up to the club right now. So just establishing some boundaries, not feeling guilty about saying them, not feeling guilty about maintaining them, and then of course make sure that you're maintaining them, right? You want to make sure, because it's hard to take somebody serious if you're saying all these things and you're not actually doing them. So create your boundaries, put them in place, and then of course maintain them. Another part of healthy relationships that's so imperative is honesty and trust. So we want to be truthful, and we want to do it in a way that's respectful and compassionate, and we also want to make sure that we're creating trust and that we're allowing people to want to trust us again. So sometimes if we've had addiction issues or we've hurt somebody in the past, maybe there was domestic violence issues, if we've done that before, we might have lost the trust of some of our loved ones and some of our friends and even our coworkers. So we want to make sure that we are being honest and that we're building that trust again. And it can take some time. It's not necessarily going to happen overnight. Now, building trust again is going to happen when you are a person of your word. So if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And if you absolutely 100% can't do it because something happens, make sure you give enough time for the person to find someone else that can help them with that. And you know, this is something we see. Like we talked about this in the beginning of our sessions. If you had promised somebody a ride to the airport, right? And then you promised that the ride is needing to occur on a Friday. And Monday or Tuesday you find out at work that you have to work later Friday, or you've worked so much this week that you feel by Friday you're just going to be too tired. And so there's still quite a few days that if you told somebody you could do something but you have to cancel, there should be enough time in there that they could still arrange for for them to get another ride. So I'm not one to cancel at the last minute unless there's an emergency. I feel like if you've told somebody you're going to do something, unless there's an emergency or unless you absolutely cannot do it because there's a flat tire or maybe there's an unexpected sickness or maybe your child needs you, unless there's something emergency-wise, I feel like you should do it. Even if you don't want to do it and it's not breaking any laws and there's nothing wrong with it, you should do it. Be a person of your word. That's how you build trust again, and that's how you become a person with integrity and an honest individual. So again, if you've had a rough or a rocky lifestyle, it can definitely lead to people not trusting you, and you have to build that up again. And trust is going to be huge in a relationship. Honesty and trust. A lot of times in addiction, we'll see dishonesty, we'll see enabling behaviors. And we're going to take a deeper look at this as we move into the family sessions, which is beginning in session 7. And we have somebody that will come and talk with us that's going to share their story, and we're going to watch a powerful movie called When a Man Loves a Woman. So I'm glad I was reminded of that. So because we're in session 5, you have a few sessions before where you're going to need to somehow, if you're watching online, here in person, we watch it in group. But if you are here online or you're watching live online, I cannot show it through the projector. I cannot video it because of copyright. So I need you to make sure that you're either renting it or you can call it libraries. Call all around. Lots of libraries have it and you can go down and check it out. Call your friends, see if anybody has a copy of it. Worst case scenario, it's a few dollars to rent on Amazon. I actually own the CD. I bought it from Amazon not long ago, and it's like $5. I'm sorry that you have to spend the money, but if you can rent it for free from a library, do so. Or if you can borrow it, do so. I will have, for those of you online, I will have various clips from the movie for session 8, but it's definitely not the same. You definitely need to watch the entire movie. It's part of the treatment program. So it's definitely something that's required that you have to, on your own honesty, move forward in doing. So I'm glad to tell you that now. A couple sessions. You have a few sessions to go and find it before. But it is something you're going to need to do. But we see a lot, especially in that movie, of different types of destructive behaviors. We see enabling behaviors. We see deception. We see manipulation. So in addiction, those types of negative behaviors are common. And people remember those. And so when you're coming back and you're doing well and you've created a new life for yourself and you want to share that with somebody else, it can be challenging for them at first. Remember, not everybody's going to just open up and trust you again. So you have to develop that again. And you know what? You may have a partner or a spouse or even an adult child that you're having a hard time trusting again because they have some addiction and they have been dishonest and they have been manipulative. So you have to work through that with yourself too, and you have to work on that forgiveness. So mending broken relationships and creating healthier relationships is going to start with some big foundation, which is called the forgiveness. Forgiveness of ourselves and the forgiveness of others. And as we learn how to forgive, we really take apart anything that is holding us back from moving forward, because forgiveness doesn't necessarily harm somebody else. Forgiveness takes a hold of us and it harms our inner being. It harms our heart. It harms our thoughts. And it can even harm us physically. When we hold grudges, it's not good for us. Physiologically, emotions like that, negative emotions, harboring resentment, those have all been shown to cause disease, especially within the heart. I mean, you can look this up. This is research that has been done in the medical community. And negative emotions can lead to disease. So unforgiveness is definitely something we have to practice and we have to learn how to do. If we want to be forgiven, we have to forgive, right? So forgiveness doesn't always mean that you stay in that relationship either. Sometimes we forgive and we have to choose through our boundaries and through our recovery the opportunity to no longer stay in a relationship that's harmful to us and that could be harmful to the other person. Because here's the situation. If you're being abused in a relationship and you realize that and you step away from that, you're doing yourself good and you're doing that other person good, because you're showing that other person that that's not the way a healthy relationship is. It may or may not make them want to make changes, but it could, and hopefully they will. So forgiveness of somebody that's harmed you and that continues to want to harm you is okay. You can forgive somebody. You do not have to rush back into any type of relationship that you were in danger from before, emotionally, physically, spiritually, anything. I am not encouraging that at all. In fact, I encourage you to really understand who you want to keep in your life and who's going to be a part of your healing journey, okay? So if you have somebody that is continuously harming you or harming your children or harming your family, you can forgive them and you do not have to continue to have that in your life. You really don't. It's important to remember too that when we make a decision to work on ourselves, and if we are going to journey into recovery or to journey into maybe just not being who we were before, we face the strong possibility of resistance from others. So, and we're going to talk more about this as we get into more family types of sessions and more looking at our family dynamics and family relationships, but it's not uncommon as you move into a relationship and as you're making positive changes. It's definitely not uncommon for people that have always known you for the way you used to be resistant to this possible change that you're eliciting. They might not trust you, right? They might have some complete trust issues with you. They might not feel that since you were not honest before, maybe they don't think you can be honest now. So they're just a little bit resistant. And you don't have to worry about their resistance. You have to worry about you. You have to worry about the changes you're making. You have to worry about your integrity, your word meaning your word, and how you're going to move forward from the here and now. Because we can't go back in our past. We can apologize for it, and we can ask for forgiveness for it, but there's nothing we can do to go back on that past and change that particular moment that happened. All we can do is work toward making amends in that type of situation. So if we did harm somebody in a relationship, maybe we were married and we had an affair outside of the marriage. Again, we can't go back and stop that affair, but we can certainly ask for forgiveness. We can certainly say we're in it, we're all in it, whatever we have to do to amend that, to make that marriage work, if that's something we both want to do. If it's a financial situation, maybe you borrowed money from somebody, maybe you take some money that you weren't allowed to take. If you have the ability right then and there to make that amends, you pay that money back. I would encourage, and I highly advise, if you have the opportunity to make a financial amends, that you begin to do it. Finances can keep people separated, and if you are making these positive changes in your life and you're doing great in one area, but yet you did steal some money in the past or you borrowed some money in the past, the best sorry is going to be changed behavior. And when we have changed behavior, we want to make up for what we've done in the past. Again, we can't go back there and stop. I wish we could stop time, right, and go back and reverse it, but we can't do that. But we can definitely make the best amends that is possible. And if you are doing a 12-step group, if that ever is something that you choose to do, we'll learn some resources about that later on in this program. But if you choose to do that, there is a part of the 12 steps that you will make amends with. And that is talked about heavily, and it's a part of any type of treatment. Making amends is huge in relationships. Now, maintaining accountability, we want to make sure that we have accountability partners. If we are doing a recovery program, or we're deciding that we don't want to drink 7 days a week, or we no longer want to smoke cigarettes, or we don't want to be rude, we want to ask healthy people in our life to help us remain accountable. And that's going to be painful sometimes, because we might be doing something that we asked somebody to hold us accountable for, and all of a sudden we're slipping, and that person sees it, and they approach us to tell us, hey, you're not doing what you said you were going to do. I'm your accountability partner, and I'm going to let you know. So just know that if you have an accountability partner and they're doing what you've asked them to do, it's not always going to be fuzzy-wuzzy, okay? You're going to have to accept that maybe you're not doing what you wanted to do, and you have to make those changes. That's the importance of having a strong, solid support system. And healthy relationships are going to include strong support systems. And that means it's people that you can count on, people that can count on you, right? People that you can call if there's an issue. Maybe you just need to talk for a few minutes. Somebody that you can go see if they're available and they're not busy, because you have to respect their boundaries too. But we have to develop a system, a support system in our life of individuals that we can count on. And then, of course, we need to be able to be someone that can be counted on too, okay? So don't be such a taker. You got to give as well. Now, you guys are actually going to be working on your worksheet during group tonight. So I will give everybody some time. I'm going to mute this session, so online you can open it up and you can take a look at it. And we're basically that's what we're going to do for the remainder of our class tonight. But what I want you guys to know is that this is avoiding toxic relationships and recovery. So if you have it there in PDF, go ahead and open it. If you've printed it out, you can actually write on it. I encourage, and I say this every time, I encourage you to print these out if you're watching from online, because I would like to see that you have put them together, that you keep them in order from session 1 all the way through session 10, and that you have something to look back on and even share with your family. This can help you build stronger. It can help them to see that you really are serious about your changes. So this is navigating one's way through intimate relationships, because they can be difficult regardless of somebody's circumstances. So marital and long-term intimate relationships must go through reconstruction during recovery. It's just part of the process. So if we're in any type of journey, our healing journey, there's going to be some reconstruction in our relationships. So there's 6 principles and prescriptions that might be of help. I'm just going to briefly cover these, and then I'm going to give you guys time to work on your worksheets. So 1 is individual healing must precede relationship healing. I said that earlier. You have to work on you before we can work on us, right? So individual healing must precede it. You can definitely encourage your spouse or your relationship or someone whoever's in your relationship, your friends, your parent, to attend support meetings for themselves too during this time. Number 2, the very thing everyone has been hoping for and praying for, recovery, can threaten an intimate relationship. So if you're coming from an addiction background and you have this addiction going on in your life and all of a sudden you're eliminating that addiction, that can certainly draw up so many things in that relationship. Even though that person's been like, I've been waiting for this for so long, but it feels weird now. You know, that enabling behavior, that codependency, all of those destructive behaviors that became so natural and normal for your friends and family are now coming to a halt, and that can be uncomfortable. So you're gonna be able to storm through that too and look through that while you're doing some of these projects in this worksheet. Number 3, relational healing takes time. Remind yourself, healing doesn't happen overnight. I've been on a physical healing journey for years, and I hope I'm getting close, but you know what? I have to remind myself, it took me decades to get to where I was sick-wise, and it's not going to happen overnight where I'm no longer sick. So we have to really understand that, and we have to give ourselves some time, and we have to be patient. Number 4, relational healing may require outside professional help. So right now you are getting professional help. You're with me. I'm a licensed therapist. I have a licensed facility. So you're getting the professional help right now. So you might want to, when these sessions are done and your court order is done, or you've met all your requirements for the charges you have, now you might have to decide if you're going to continue that and maybe seek individual counseling, maybe move forward with some family counseling. These are all great options, and I will have plenty of resources for you. All you have to do is reach out. Number 5, some relationships are not salvageable, especially in recovery, and we talked about that briefly already. Not everybody's going to be able to stay in the same relationship they were in before. When you grow and somebody else doesn't grow, that relationship's probably not going to be able to be mended. If you want it to be healthy, you can stay in it all you want. But if you're really working on your health and your recovery and your wellness, staying in a relationship like that is not going to be conducive for the changes you're making. All right, so go ahead and read through this amazing worksheet. This is one of the best worksheets we have. And I want you to, on page 3, this is going to be part of working your program. So you're going to write down 5 different warning signs that tell you when you want to avoid a relationship with someone. So these are your red flags. So if you've been in an abusive relationship in the past, you might remember some of the things that you probably saw in the beginning that are considered red flags now that you can begin to implement before you even get into a relationship like that. So for some people, it might be an individual, they meet somebody who's unemployed and just can't seem to maintain a job. That could be a red flag for somebody. A red flag, if you're choosing not to drink or use drugs anymore, a red flag would be somebody that goes to the bar and line and is drinking and using substances. So there's your red flag. So write down your warning signs. And then you have early warning signs that tell you that you should get out of a relationship that has begun. So now maybe you've moved forward into the relationship. You didn't really see any beginning red flags, but now you're seeing them that you're in the relationship. What are they? What are some things in the very beginning of a relationship that can indicate a red flag for you? And maybe it's all of a sudden they used to be nice and they're no longer nice anymore. Maybe it's as simple as they used to open the door for you when you went out in public, and after a few weeks into the relationship, they're no longer doing that. That could be a red flag. Doesn't mean that it's the end of a relationship, but it could be maybe the person starting to not respect you as much or not value you as much. So write down some early warning signs there. And then it'll have you consider remaining out of a serious relationship through your early months of recovery. So it's not unheard of to not get into a relationship. If you're not married, of course if you're married, nobody's asking you to get divorced. Nobody would never consider that. But if you're single and you're going into a recovery program, more than likely you're going to be advised and encouraged not to jump into a relationship right now. This is you time. Work on yourself. So that's what number 4 is talking about. And then number 5, define what you want in a relationship. What are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who's educated? Are you looking for someone who's employed? Maybe you have some children and you don't want any more children, so maybe you're looking for somebody that has their own children too, so they're not expecting children out of this relationship. So maybe that's something you want to put in here. What are some specific characteristics? Maybe you want somebody that holds the door for you. Maybe you want somebody who's polite and kind. Maybe you are a Christian and you want somebody else that's a Christian. Maybe you want to be equally yoked with somebody. Maybe you're not Christian. Maybe you enjoy the Buddha religion and you want somebody else that's Buddhist. So you need to really define that and find out what it is you want. Because as you work on you, these are things that are going to help remind you when you do meet somebody if they're meeting your requirements that you set early on for yourself. And then 5, seek a relationship coach if you want to. A counselor, friend, or even another person in recovery can be of use. Number 6, if you find your old relationship pattern continuing, get into a long-term therapy relationship that focuses on breaking this pattern. So you might, if you're finding yourself, even despite doing all these, you're still jumping into relationships that have been harmful in the past and you seem to continue that behavior, you might need to look into more longer-term therapy. Not necessarily forever for the rest of your life, but maybe you need to find a therapist again that you can work through some of these issues with. Maybe you have some past trauma that you just haven't dealt with and it needs to be dealt with now. Because traumatic situations from our childhood can certainly manifest. We can repress those memories can return, we can have triggers and those memories can happen. So we want to work through trauma. And then finally, number 7, assertively manage your own safety and the safety of your children at all times. And that's something you're going to hear me always say. I want you to be safe. I expect you to be safe and I expect you, from one parent to another, to protect your children. And if you're not in those situations that are keeping you or them safe, you need to remove yourself. You need to get into a safe program. We have resources. I can guide you. Just reach out to me. Call me. Email me. Text me. Whatever it is you're comfortable with. I will provide you with resources. And we always have resources here at our clinic. I can mail them out to you. It's, whatever you need, however you need them. I can email them to you and you'll have them. So just know that there's our resources available. So definitely take some time, probably about the next, let's see what time it is. Okay, so about the next 10 minutes, I'll let you guys work on this. And then I will come back and we will basically just say some goodbyes and end today's session. So as we move into session 6 and then 7, remember please that session 8 is going to require you to have the movie When a Man Loves a Woman. So just start being on the lookout for that. Maybe you can ask around, hey, do you have When a Man Loves a Woman? This is if you're online, because I cannot, because of copyright issues, show it and record it. But it is a part of this treatment program, and it's definitely a huge part of most group therapy. You'll see this movie often. So When a Man Loves a Woman, it's from the 90s, Meg Ryan, M.T. Garcia. You can call around the libraries. Most libraries are able to rent it out, and that's free. All right, so take some time, work on your worksheet, and I will come back in about 10, 15 minutes to say our goodbyes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, let me get that.
screen, what'll happen, you'll get a confirmation email from Calendly. And inside that email is going to have a link that will take you to